Welcome to Inspiring Entrepreneurs, presented by BDO Canada, our 16th season, and on the show we deliver wisdom and valuable advice directly from Canadian business leaders. I'm Dan Delmar of TNKR Media.
And I'm Michael Newton from BDO Canada.
And this is one of, if not the longest running Canadian business radio show. Our entrepreneur of the day is Damien Girard. He is the co-founder of a family farm called Viandes Biologiques de Charlevoix, so organic meat of Charlevoix. And the interesting thing about this episode, Mike, is that we went down the supply chain from last week. So we had pizza number 900, and we were talking about the meat on his pizza and where he gets it and the attention to detail of the farmers who make it. And so we said, well, hey, let's just talk to the farmers. And Damien Girard is that person. Viandes Bio, very interesting business and part of a group of family farms that have kind of cornered the market in organic meat in Quebec.
Yeah, Dan, I agree. It's very interesting to see how Damien's, let's call it, situation is very different from a lot of our guests. I mean, you're talking about a very much land-oriented farmer with a very different marketing approach and not as concentrated, if you will, from a business angle as we're used to when it comes to the outside world and marketing, but certainly about as pure and as honest as it gets, with a massive desire to improve what we eat, how we eat it, and the world around us.
It's a really interesting profile, and Damien's kids have divisions in the business of produce and related products and prepared foods. We'll get to all of that and the latest in innovative farming practices in a few minutes. But first, Mike, you're actually joining us from far away from the West Coast today, and I have a question for you. Which Delmar is closest to your heart? Is it me or California?
Well, they're both spelt a little differently, so I'm not sure that's a fair assessment. But yes, I am in Delmar, California at Breeders' Cup horse races. So for those of you that know me, I am a horse kind of guy. I've been involved in racing. My dad used to train in Montreal back in the 60s when the thoroughbreds were here. So this is my yearly jaunt to wherever the Breeders' Cup happens to be hosted. So matter of fact, you can probably be after the show, not now, not yet, but after the show, you can probably pick up on NBC some of the races.
Fun. Well, have an amazing time. I remember passing through Delmar, California, just for the lulls of it, and it is a beautiful stretch of the Pacific coast.
It's spectacular. You're right along the ocean, and even from the track, you stand the finish line and look down the stretch, and you see foothills and ocean. So, doesn't get much better than this.
A lot of networking in the horse racing environment.
Very much so. There's actually a very large circle. I mean, let's be honest. There's a lot of money spent in the racing industry. It's not for the faint of heart, and it's not for the low in the pocketbook. So I've been out to a couple of events which are very, very interesting to see, and very much that whole environment of well-dressed cocktail parties and to be seen, and there's a lot of high-profile owners around, a lot of celebrities. So it's been a lot of fun. Makes me feel like I'm one of the smaller guys when you walk around some of these events. So it's pretty amazing.
Speaking of hot scenes, and not as hot perhaps as California, but here in Quebec, the tech sector is heating up. So let's move on with our current events segment. And this from BetaKit. Quebec's tech sector is now worth about $100 billion. The highest funding round of any Quebec company received in 2023 was Valsoft at $221 million. They had around there. CEO Sam Youssef, by the way, the star of an episode of Inspiring Entrepreneurs just last year. Subscribers can access that on our podcast feed on iHeart, Spotify, Apple, your favorite platform, so you can hear Sam Youssef's journey to that record-breaking round. BetaKit reports the second largest rounds in 2023 went to insurance and wealth management solutions provider Equisoft and blockchain tech startup Blockstream, each with $162 million rounds. Very encouraging, Mike, for the local tech sector.
Yeah, the local tech sector certainly continues to be in Montreal, certainly the center of Canada, and we were always kind of known as Silicon Valley North. Though with the state of Silicon Valley lately, let's hope we're creating something a little more positive. But it's very interesting. I mean, most people don't realize that Montreal and Quebec actually have been the most M&A activity going on in Canada for a number of years. And, we think that this city is not as booming and as bustling as it is in the rest. I think what happens here is, I hate to say this because this was the reality, is in many cases we continue to be the Montreal Expos of the investment world, where we've got a lot of great farm system, we got a lot of people setting things up, finally getting some of this money to stay here in Quebec, which is really good. But for years on end now, Quebec has been the most activity. And you say, okay, so it's a lot of smaller deals. No, it's actually been the most activity and the most dollars overall being invested. And the biggest benefit of that, obviously, is the continued tech sector, with strong, young, vibrant individuals, obviously coming out of a lot of the feeder systems, out of the incubators, and very impressive on the international scene, well known, as a matter of fact.
So our tech sector is doing really well, but overall, there's this article lately from the Journal de Montréal, which portrays entrepreneurship in general as on the decline. So in 1992, the paper reports there were 197,000 entrepreneurs in Quebec, according to the Ministry of the Economy. And in 2021, that was down to 133,000. So if we're going to continue on this rate, some predict that in less than a year, there could be somewhere around 100,000 businesses in Quebec. So that nearly half as many as there were in the early 90s.
So you can take that in two different directions. One, you can say, yes, there's an overall decline in the number of entrepreneurs, but you can also say that the strength still continues to be there, like we were talking about before in the M&A side, where these companies are merging together. So you've still got a lot of very strong entrepreneurial spirit going on. But no doubt that a lot of the companies that get picked up either through M&A or private equity are kind of losing that Quebec flair as it turns into a much more international. There's no doubt that the ongoing environment of complexity and compliance are going to continue to be problematic everywhere. And I think Quebec is additionally pained with the levels of compliance that are just beyond reality on many occasions.
Mixing it up a little bit here from Inc.com, scientists just discovered diving headfirst into your workday will make you significantly more productive. Headfirst, like how long are we talking about? Wake up and at your desk within a half hour or what?
So you got two different definitions here, because you got a lot of people working from home. So the article that he starts writing is he's basically 10 minutes from the time he wakes up to the time he's sitting at his desk.
Wow.
Which is pretty impressive. Though I will tell you, maybe I'm not a case study, but certainly in my experience, I'm about 10 minutes from the office, and from the time I wake up to the time I'm at my office, and that includes shaving and showering and getting there is usually less than 30 minutes. So, to me, the problem is, and he discusses this, is your efficiency level. If you start slow and you kind of meander, you kind of take that approach into starting your day. So you kind of phase yourself in, whereas if you hit the ground running, you're off, you're alert, you're quick. And it does not seem, to the studies that they're doing, it does not seem to have any kind of effect on longevity or stamina towards the end of the day.
This next argument from a website called yourtango.com, 9 reasons bosses don't want to hire Gen X anymore. Another generational topic, Mike.
Yeah, Dan, it is. We're going to come at it from a different angle this time, though I'm not sure how credible the science is. But hey, at least it was playing the corollary theory here, where we're on the other side of the fence as opposed to picking on the Gen Zs and the millennials. So, again, going through some of these, I have to admit there is some truth to it. I mean, I fall into this category, and if I was going out on the marketplace, I got to tell you, this would likely be the case. Some of the reasons people are not looking to hire Gen Xers on the market is, in many cases, they're overqualified. They've had, years of experience. They usually lack tech savviness. There's no doubt that, a 57-year-old like me and a 22-year-old coming into the marketplace, there's a little bit of a difference in our tech usage. We're not known for work-life balance. So the Gen Xers, are providing a culture and environment that for a young organization may be counter intuitive to what's going on. So I can see where that could be problematic. I take offense to the next one. It says they're closer to retiring. I'm no closer to retiring today than I was 15 years ago. So I'm not sure that's all truthful, but I think that's more of a state of mind than anything else. So, yeah, I mean, it goes on with a whole bunch of other areas. But, the one I got to chuckle at is they don't work overtime if they're not being paid. I got to tell you, some days lately, I don't think anybody works overtime without wanting to be paid. So I think, again, taking into question a little bit of yourtango.com's check. I'd love to see the sample, and I'd love to see the basis for their assessment. But I do agree with some of it.
This next one from Fortune.com, we recognize that website. Gen Z and young millennial employees, still on the intergenerational file, they are missing the equivalent of 1 day's work every week due to mental health. Really?
Yeah, I don't think this is taking a day off. I think this is lost time in productivity, so the equivalence of 1 day. And I'm not surprised, in all honesty. I mean, if you look at the stress levels, if you look at the world that we're living in, if you look at those, certainly working from a remote area, not so simple. And I think, you're also starting about people that are either thinking of having kids or have started to have kids, which in and of itself is just a massive, massive drain on everybody. And look, we know that COVID took its toll. We know that COVID created one of the most difficult environments for young families. So you're going to continue to have this stress of what's going on. And I think that this is going to continue to happen. I mean, you take that, sorry, you take that and you extrapolate it over the course of the year. I mean, you're talking close to 60 days lost to productivity. That's we're talking a very significant amount of time. And let's be honest, I mean, I think part of the biggest complaint over the last few years is that productivity has been down. And, for many cases, productivity shouldn't be down if you look at the tech availability. Productivity shouldn't be down if you look at what is at our fingertips. So there's only one real reason that it can be, and I think that goes to mental health. So, it certainly brings up the question of, where is everybody better suited to work from, and what starts to reduce those mental health issues. And I think that needs to be where we start to focus our attention on and say, hey, you know what? If we're trying to get more out of people, is there any reality to environment A being better than environment B, and then being able to focus? It also throws a lot of fuel on the fire to a 4-day work week. And, this has traditionally been the push over the last, I would say probably started about 10 years ago, but certainly since COVID, and a lot of big people. So, if you can give me 4 good days, am I better off than 5 days that are a little bit less effective? Once we can figure out whether we pay you for 4 days or 5 days while you're working that, I don't think people want to lose a salary associated with it. But this is definitely moving in the direction of a 4-day work week, shall we call it a defining moment.
Interesting that you went there to the 4-day work week, and never a supporter of it, but here's one potential way to offset that, or maybe find a middle ground. I've been saving this story for a while from Benefits Canada. Bare minimum work days, helping employees relax, recharge after a condensed work week, according to one expert. So more employees and job candidates have realized they prefer to pack the hustle and bustle of the work week into a more condensed schedule, so they have 1 day to exhale, take a longer lunch, or to end their workday early. Or in the case of my team, we try not to do certain types of meetings on Fridays, for instance. So it's more of an editing day or a writing day. Bare minimum work days. What do you think about that concept?
Yeah, I think we have, to a certain degree, moved in that direction when we went away from the 5-day work week to a casual Friday, which brought in a significant mindset shift. I think a lot of places went to Fridays where it was a little bit longer lunch. It was maybe leaving a tad early. So we've kind of been moving in that direction for a while. The key to me is whatever that work week is defined at, and whether that's 4 days at 8 hours, 4 days at 10 hours, 5 days. We need to be efficient and effective in that time frame, and I think that's where we need to maintain it. If we go to a 4-day work week, we can't take the philosophy that the back half of the last day of the work week is a little more casual, because that means that would be a Thursday afternoon if you're working Monday to Thursday, and now you're only going 3.5 days with that casual part. So I think we will eventually get there. Same as I think we may get to a point where we may start to see 3 people doing 2 full-time jobs, just because of the hustle and bustle, because of the stress levels, because of mental health issues, because of a reallocation of salary and a lifestyle. And my concern is we're going to end up continuing to lose ground internationally. But I guess that becomes part and parcel of the decision that society makes. I mean, if you look where we stand now competitively in all of North America, I'm not just we're talking about Montreal or Canada, but all of North America. I mean, we have lost ground productivity to so many different places. Though there are places in Europe that have managed to maintain productivity and go to the 4-day work week. So I think it really, in many cases, is going to be a philosophical approach to the way people handle this. I'm not going to say there's a generation that is more robust or stronger. I think it really is how you get used to a work environment and what you're capable of producing and you want to produce and are engaged in that time frame.
And one last story for the podcast audience, Mike, why Canada's economy is just fine, apparently. This story in Maclean's magazine got a lot of traction online politically. Now, it is an interesting argument, and while I can't get into all the specifics, it would take a long time. Here's one passage that stood out. We might not match the U.S. in sheer economic output, but we outperform them when we turn our attention to a broad range of measures of things that truly matter to everyday Canadians. Public policy should focus on measures that truly reflect our well-being, like real median income, fairness, and quality of life. It's not that GDP is irrelevant, but it shouldn't be the only yardstick. Instead of chasing after elusive American-style GDP growth, that's the one that caught a lot of attention online, Mike, elusive American-style GDP growth, we do well to appreciate the strengths of our economy and work to make it even better for everyone. The myth of a productivity crisis doesn't reflect the reality of life in one of the richest, fairest countries in the world, and that's something we shouldn't lose sight of. That's by Brian Lewis in Maclean's magazine.
Do you really want me to comment on this one, Dan? Because I can take this in a few directions that are going to raise a little bit of trouble. I mean, I understand, again, the philosophical approach to the commentary. Realistically, you find yourself in a downward tailspin at some point if you still don't have your eye on the economy and the focus and trying to stay competitive with everybody else. So while it's nice to say that we try to get into, median income and we try to create more of a social net, part of our problem in this country is not the availability of social nets. It's the execution of many of the programs. And part of it is people take advantage of the system. The people that need it don't always get it. And the reallocation of the resources isn't always the smoothest. And realistically speaking, you look at this and you say, okay, well, we're not going to look at GDP as a measure. I mean, this goes back to the old conversation of, how do we define profit? Is profit going to be a social statement? Is profit going to be an absolute dollar? Is profit going to be remaining after kicking in for, ESG or for many other forms? It's an article. I'll give it that. I have a hard time. Mr. Competitive over here has a very hard time saying let's just rest on our laurels and enjoy what we've done and focus more on the social side of things. Because I think at a certain point in time, like I said, you're going to tailspin and you're going to end up in an environment where you're going, okay, this has been really good. Everybody's warm and fuzzy, or everybody's got a better sense of balance, which I wish we could do a better job of doing. But realistically, we don't live in a vacuum. We're not living in a bubble, and the more you lose competitive ground to somebody else, the more the long run is going to ultimately pay the price. And, we always forget at the end of the day that productivity and GDP is what ultimately creates the tax base that supports a lot of the social system. So, it's an article.
It is an article indeed. One other observation, Mike, is I'm not sure if you're familiar with the concept. I think this argument falls into the category of something that's been called degrowth, or the degrowth movement, right? Because if you're satisfied with the status quo, as we accept more and more Canadians, and you still don't want to grow the country or expand our GDP, well, that is effective degrowth. And that to me is a little bit of a nihilistic attitude.
100%. I mean, for years, I've said that if you're not growing, you're not moving forward, you're not staying status quo, you're actually going backwards. You're losing ground. So whether that's losing ground to your neighbor, losing ground to a neighboring country, losing ground on an international scale, I think it's a very dangerous position to be. I think it's a very narcissistic position to be in, that I'm good and we're good in this generation. So by default, that either it doesn't matter that the next generation is sitting in a position where they have not taken a benefit from any kind of growth that we've had, or you're just worried about today, which we all know is really not anything in the long-term planning perspective.
And let's get right to our entrepreneur today. His name is Damien Girard, the co-owner of Viandes Biologiques de Charlevoix. He joins us from Charlevoix. Hello, Damien.
Hello.
How are you?
Not too bad.
You're joining us from Saint-Urbain, the headquarters of Viandes Bio de Charlevoix. Very simple name. Tell us, what do you do?
Well, the name tells a lot about our work. First of all, we began with we were producer. We're a producer of pork and chicken. I'm a biologist and have studied at College McDowell, McGill University Department. And first of all, I'm a nutritionist for the animals. So we began the company in 2000. And it's going to be 25 years old that the company exists next year. For the production of organic animals, we had to transform because the fresh meat of pork and chicken was very difficult to sell in the store, especially for the pork, because when we have a whole pork, it's not easy for the consumer to buy the whole pork. So have tried to make some travel in France and all over the Europe to learn to make some transformation products. And today we're making a lot of dry sausages, prosciutto, and so on. And we're selling mainly in Quebec. We're not federal approved, so we're selling only in Quebec, Quebec province. So our market is principally in Montreal and the area of Montreal, about 80% of our business, and the rest of the products are sold mainly in Quebec City or around or here in the region. We're not selling too much in the region of Charlevoix because we have not too much people. But when our customer come in vacancy or so on, they come to see us, and it's very pleased for us to welcome them. Yeah.
So the term biologique, has been quite common in most people's, vocabulary. Though I beg to ask you that, what defines, what's that transformation? Because obviously the term is something that people see when they go to the store. I dare say that 75, if not more, of those percent of those people don't know what that means and what that entails. And I know that there's a whole process here in terms of how you grow things, what you feed them, the environment with which they live, which is very, very different than what I think most people feel in the old school approach.
Yeah. First of all, the organic agriculture, I think, was made for many years ago, up to, let's say, the 50s or the 60s years. And when I began in organic business, all the people were telling me, well, it's a kind of fashion. What is organic? It's a fashion. It's an opportunity for the market. What is that? But the fashion is not the organic business, because it is the agriculture that was done for many years. I think the fashion is for the intensive agriculture that we are living now. So it's a very different way to see the organic business. But the organic business, I did not make any new things. I just making agriculture like in the 40 or 50 years ago. So it's very important to realize that. So I have some facilities of the years of the new century for sure, but the agriculture is done like it was done for many years. So when we raise some, let's say, cereals on the field, we utilize our manure to compost it and to we reutilize it on the field. So we don't have any liquid manure. We have only a solid manure. So it's for the environment. It's much better because we cannot contaminate the nappe phréatique or so on. And we don't utilize any fertilizer, mineral or organic fertilizer or pesticide or so on. So we're making cereals like my father was making, let's say, when I was young. And for the animals, it's very different of many things. So we have a maximum of animals per square feet or feet or meter square or so on. So we don't, let's say, concentrate too much the animals, because when we concentrate too much, we create a stress for the animals. And when we have a stress, the animal is not able to, let's say, fight for the disease. So when we let the animal to have some space and to have the natural behavior of the animal, so we need less antibiotics and so on. So in organic business, we don't have the right to utilize antibiotics and growth factors and so on. And we put organic grains without any hormones or so on. And so it makes an animal very different. Our way of production is different because I'm a nutritionist, so I utilize only the old cereals that we were growing, let's say, in Charlevoix. We cannot grow some corn or soybean because we don't have enough good temperature for that. So we grow, let's say, oats, barley, peas, seigle, that is buckwheat, and we feed them to the animals. So the oats it's a very good cereals that were utilized many years ago, but now it's not utilized anymore because they have too much fiber on the cereals. The oats contains about 40% fibers and 60%, let's say, of the wheat or so on. So when we put some fibers on the alimentation of the animal, so we decrease the growth. So we have animals that are more, the age of the animal is longer. So we have a different meat. That's the principle of my philosophy. And that's why we have a taste for the chicken like this, and for the pork also, because we make a chicken, it's 63 days. So the industry now is making them in 35 days. So you can see that the structure of the animal, the meat, the legs, and the bones are very different, and the taste also. So, and when we're not utilizing corn is a cereals that is not good because it's not balanced. You have too much energy, no fibers, and no protein. So when you utilize corn, you have a chicken that is yellow, but with a lot of fat that is not good fat, that when you put the chicken on the oven, the fat is going you lose this fat because it's not a good fat. So that's the way. Yeah.
So Mike, I mean, I was going to ask Damien why it tastes better, but he's given us quite a good explanation, and I do taste the difference, I have to say.
Yeah, and our chicken is not yellow. Our chicken is beige, so the color is very different. And when you cook it, if you have 2 kilos, you're gonna eat 2 kilos of meat. So it's very different. And because of that, the skin is very thin. And for the pork, that brings us a very good fat that is very white, and the fat is very hard. So when you taste the dry sausages with that fat, you don't have the impression of have some oil on the mouth. You know, the fat is very hard, so it's a kind of very tasty.
I find it interesting. I mean, obviously, we grew up. I'm 57, and I guess I grew up in the era of process. Everything was processed. I guess we can blame some companies for that, but that's a whole different conversation, a whole different radio show. I look at the movement, and what struck me about what you were saying is, what you're doing is what we did for centuries. I mean, we've spent more time trying to process food and to mass produce at the expense of the health of everybody that's around. And we look at this and we go, oh, organic or biologic, and everybody goes, that's more expensive, or it's natural, And the process of the work that you're doing, and it's important, is that your biologic or your organic or your natural approach is the full cycle. You're growing, you're producing, you're feeding, you're growing the animals, and all of this, and it goes a very long way in taking us back. it really makes me wonder what, where the evolution of this is going to, because we live in a society that needs instant gratification, and your 35 days that it takes a chicken versus your, whatever you were saying, 61 days,
Yeah.
is a whole world that is a problem. It's that mass production. It's gimme now, and this will continue to be a problem. Down. I mean, this is a statement on society as much as it is on pork and chicken production.
Yeah, the industry has the producer to be very, very more and fast and more productive. So it's not, I think the producer have the same passion than me, but they have a way of production of growing that is asking from the industry, and if they're not have performance, they're not going to be able to survive, and that's the problem, because if you ask the producer or give the choice to produce more slowly and a different product, I think all are going to go inside of that kind of things, but you will have to give the price for that. When we produce a chicken of 63 days, there's a big cost of that, because we have the double of time, 50% less chicken on the same space on the barn, and we have the same labor, the same manure, the same things. So when you had all that cost together, that's the price that the organic chicken is on the grocery on your store. That's why there's so much difference.
This has been the problem in the farming industry for decades now, is that inability to ramp up. I think the small farmer, the family farmer, trying to compete against a large corporate farmer is behind the eight ball before they even start. And this is, that's why we're seeing some of the problems we're seeing in food production. But I think it's also part of the problem as to why the farming industry is suffering so bad. What are your thoughts?
The problem is that let's say 50 years ago or 40 years ago, a normal family were spending, let's say, 40% or 50% of their salary to buy some food for the family. Now, I think, I don't have the right percentage, but I think we have, let's say 10% or even less than 10% of the budget of the family to the alimentation. The pressure on the producer and the transformator is to make products more and more available for the customer. But our customer that buy our products, they're not more rich than the others. They have just make a choice to take that product. They eat less meat, but when they eat meat, they want to buy a meat that is more ethic or is more natural or so on. So I have some customers that come at the boutique here in Saint-Urbain, and we know that their choice is on the alimentation. It's not for a travel in Cuba or so on. They just make some choice of their life, and that's why we have to change the mentality of the customer also. It's very difficult for some customers to buy a product that is very expensive, but I know that some people cannot afford that kind of products, but if they have a choice of making some things in their life, maybe, or if they understand more this production, maybe they're going to make better choice for that.
You've probably seen the meat in your stores. It is organic meat. The process is a lot longer, as Damien explained. Is the effort worth it? Well, I mean, I've tasted it, and I can taste a difference in some of the meat that I buy from Viandes Biologiques de Charlevoix. And as he was saying, it's also a family business. And there's that aspect as well that we're always really interested in, Mike. And Damien, how do you solve problems when you have disagreements on the family farm? Because here in the city, we have our corporate manuals, we have our processes, and many emails that go back and forth, and boards. Obviously, on the farm, things work a bit differently.
Yeah, well, for now, we have a business that is more important than only a farm. So with the transformation, we have about 50 employees in total. So we have some places for children to take some, let's say, things that they prefer or they have a passion for. So I have a girl that is in administration, and another one that is on the barn for swine. So she inseminate the female, So, and she's growing a big, let's say, a big garden for making all the tomatoes and the piments and so on for our transformation. So we help her a lot on that. And my son is taking care of the animals, so the chicken and the pork. And for me, I'm making, let's say, too much desk, because I don't like to make the desk. But I'm very happy on my tractor and my moissonneuse batteuse. It's very in harvesting some cereals. It's the best way for me. But I have to make some desk each days. And we're making we have to change our mind, you know, because at the beginning I was taking decision by my own, and now I have to take decision in family. So we have to take care of that, and we have to let a place of that children's to make their own effort, to make their own decision, and so on. And we have to learn that, because if you don't let the children do that, but they're going to not to be interested for a long time, you know. They have to make their own goals and their own inspiration. So that's the equation that we have to handle with. And I think for the moment it's going well, but I'm going to be there for a long time still. Maybe I'm 60 years old now. Okay, so I hope I'm going to die on my tractor or so on. But I'm going to maybe make a choice of that things that I love more than now in the future. So I'm going to make the work that I prefer, and let the work that I don't like to other of my family or so on. But for the moment, it's going well, and each one is taking a small part of the enterprise. And now they have my son have create a small business with beef. So we're going to have organic beef, but with his wife, and he made that last year. So he's going to have some beef organic products that we're going to include in our delivery and let's say réseau de distribution. So it's going to be more easier for him, because we have already all the doors that are open, you know. And I'm very proud of that, because he's making his own project, and it's very a good motivation from him and his wife, you know. And my daughter also is making some tomatoes and spaghetti sauce and so on. So she has his own small business. So the business things in the family is very present.
So the hard part of all of this, and I alluded to this before in terms of farming, being big business and kind of cutting out the smaller family farms, is the this is a lifestyle choice. This is not, you're an accountant, you're a lawyer, you're a doctor, you go home at the end of the day, you do something different. I mean, what you guys are doing is a lifestyle choice. You're living there, you're breathing it, you're creating an environment, and you're competing against, multi-billion-dollar industries to try and carve something out. I mean, yes, there's the biological term or the organic term to it. And yes, Dan, it does taste differently. But how do you keep that going? How do you drive beyond the fact that you're constantly, in French you'd say coincé, you're being, you're being squeezed from both sides in a large environment. And how does that continue to keep the motivation at the young levels to continue to drive forward? They have to buy into the lifestyle as well.
Yeah. Well, in the last, 5 years ago, we had our barn that was burned 2017, and it was a big problem for us, because we lost all the mother and all the pigs. And at this time, I think it was a big enjeu for us, because we're not buying pork from other people, we're just producing our own pork, So it was not a question for us to not continue to do that. So we were in family at that time, and I think the family helps us a lot because we were able to put some problems on the shoulder of the others, and we make a project, and this project changed all the business way, because we built a new barn that was more adapted to us, and we introduced the biomass. All the heat is produced by biomass. It's some residue of trees that is made just beside us, and we have that residue free, and we create all the heat for the barn, all the heat for the transformation center. And this problem that happened 5 years ago opened us all the future for the enterprise, And the thing that is very important for us is that there's a proverb in French that les bottines doivent suivre les babines. Donc, in organic, we don't have just to have some pictures on a website. We have to make the things that are going to goes together, And this way to produce our heat, so we don't have any more gas on the site. We are very we eating everything with that kind of thing with biomass. And the problem for a small company like us to fight with the bigger one is the education of the people that are buying our products. We try to make more education that we can. Some people that are helping us, like you're going to help us this morning. We have some TV show that are going to come, some emission, but the thing is the information, and it's our big challenge for the next year to make education from the people when they buy our products. What are they under the products? What is the history under the product, And it's not easy for us because we don't have the mean or the economic means to make some big publicity or so on. So we have to take customer one by one and learn them what we're doing. That's the big fight for us. Yeah.
So it's interesting because you're taking, you're not just competing against, shall I call it regular meat? I don't know what the proper term is, mainstream, and you're providing a service. You're competing against other organic growers. Are you competing against other organic growers that are much larger in scale, or are you competing still in a niche market that is not having the large businesses get involved in? And then add on to that question is how does that affect the marketing and the distribution and how you get your message out you're talking about?
Yeah. Well, we have not too much organic grower or transformation people in the organic in Quebec. So we have Du Breton in pork that we have a very good relation. And we have Les Voltigeurs is a chicken in Drummondville that everyone know. And we sometimes slaughtering our chicken on their slaughterhouse, so we have a good relation. There's no problem. The problem is that we have each one we have a small market. It's a market of créneaux, and tomorrow morning I'm not able to tell some people with our family to decide to make, let's say, 1,000 chicken more each week. We have a very precise amount of chicken for everyone, Voltigeur and us, and for the pork, it's the same thing. The market is very small. It's a kind of créneau, and we try to expand that percentage of market that we have. With new products, with products that are more accessible for the customers. But we have to expand that market. But how to expand that market? It's not so easy. We have some chain that are very pleased with us, that are buying our products. an example is Avril. Avril, it's a kind of a grocery that is very concentrated on organic and natural products. They make a lot of expansion. They made a lot of expansion in the last 2 years. Let's say they were at the first time they had only one store, and now I think they had 8 or 10 stores. So our expansion was mainly from that kind of stores, because they are specialized in our products, and they buy a lot of our products. They are good not customer, but the retailers for us, but to the customer, how to reach them and to explain that amount of products. I think it's by education and taking, let's say, prise de conscience. I don't know how to spell it in English, for each one, And it's a long way. We're not going to increase from, let's say, 10% or 15% each year. We're expanding now 2, 3, 4, 5, and this year the main goals to our company was to keep our place and percentage of selling because of the increase of the inflation and so on. We not increase our prices last year because we were very, let's say, inquiet for the next year, for the year 2024, because of the inflation. We did not know if we were able to keep our place on the market, and we did. So, and we had a lot of a small increase because our customers that are eating our products, they kept to eat it. So we were very anxious about that, but it was good,
It sounds to me, Damien, like the marketing side of this and the distribution side of this is almost not in competition with the Voltigeurs and guys like this, but is more so a cooperative approach to trying to get the information out and trying to sell. So, you don't sound like you're selling a chicken against les Voltigeurs in Drummondville in a store, but rather trying to get that message out, which to me sounds very much like the old model in the country, which was la coopérative, right? The old co-op model of trying to do things. How do you band together? How do you get the other organic producers together to create a market as opposed to you each doing it individually? Are you trying something along those lines?
Yeah, no, we did not try anything, but I think it should be a way to do it, because we should talk together to find some ways to be more efficient, more have more visibility and so on. The people that are taking care of the organic business, let's say the government, we have an organism that is Aliments du Québec. So Aliments du Québec 2 years ago began to put some stickers of Aliments du Québec, mais bio and so on. That helps us for sure, and I think we have to maybe to sit with the government and all the organic business to make a way to have more information for the consumer. But the percentage of selling and the budget that we have, when you compare that to the normal business of alimentation, it's about, let's say, 2 or 3% of the market. It's not too much, So it's very difficult to make some large education, and so on. But the stores like Avril that are very geographically well situated, so everyone have the chance to buy some organic products now near their door. So it's a way to expand the market, But we don't have the solution for now. But I think your idea is very good. We should sit together and maybe have a front commun to have more selling or more information. I don't know. It's a good question.
I'm available for consultation. Dan, and you'll excuse the pun on this one. This sounds like a chicken or an egg problem here to me, right? I mean, ultimately, at the end of the day, what do we band together? Do we start to market? Do we try and create a market? Do we produce more? And then the question is can you produce more even if you got the market exposure in terms of what's there based on the restrictions? Sounds like Mr. Delmar sounds like an awful complicated process in order to try and get a business out there.
Just from the marketing perspective, I mean, everyone loves the product, at least everyone who eats meat, right? So it's being gobbled up very quickly. I wonder if the future isn't in something bigger, more consolidated, and able to deliver more products to more people. Also, looking far down the future, Damien, obviously, being kind to animals is a concern going forward. Do you guys have your eye on any kind of futuristic plans, like lab grown meat, for example, which might be one thing far down the road?
Yeah. The situation is well understand for you guys, because we cannot expand to let's say 25 or 50% now, because we have a family now. We are very happy with what we have. We don't lost qualities of our products, so we want to stay at that stage. The only thing is to be efficient, to keep our market. It's the goals that we have in the future. But if the children want to take another way, I don't know. Maybe they're going to take another way and have more products, or let's say go further. I don't know. Maybe we can have a line of dogs and cats food. We don't know. It's possible, because we have some things that now we are not utilizing with our animals, that maybe we can go further with that. It's a kind of thing that should be interesting for us. But in the future, it's just to keeping the quality of the company, be more efficient, pay our debt, because we made a lot of investment in 2 or 3 years ago to build the new barns and to build a new center of transformation. So we have to take care of that now, because we have a lot of debt, and we have to go, let's say 2 or 3 years more to be able to make another big investment. So it's for us, it's the enjeu right now. But the future, I'm very confident from the future, because we have more and more people that are giving us a good, let's say, background of what we are doing. 20 years ago, when I was doing some organic business, I had to make a lot of education, and now that the young peoples are more want to know what they are eating, where it's from, where it's coming from. And I think the population that is coming, it's more easier to us to sell some product to them. But for that. But for the future, I don't know. I don't have any big project right now on my desk. But just to keep the family together, have some fun, take some glass of wine at the Thursday or the Friday night, and to just relax. It's just my way of life, and taking care of my animals. I don't have any expansion or idea to be the biggest in Canada or in Quebec. It's not my goals. Yeah.
Damien Girard, co-owner of Viandes Biologiques de Charlevoix, our inspiring entrepreneurs for this time. We'll have his one piece of advice for inspiring entrepreneurs coming up next. But first, our debrief segment, and Mike is here. Again, Mike is the lead in national corporate development at BDO Canada, and the topic today is running a family business, especially one where, in this case, as Damien was explaining, Mike, the kids have different divisions, they have different responsibilities, different levels of expertise, and everyone's kind of coming together with their various expertise to create what is a really interesting and diverse product line that kind of runs the gamut. You have your raw meats, you have your sauces, your sausages. So it's really quite a big operation.
It is. It's fascinating to see what For most people today, I think has become a lost art, which is that ability to create a lifestyle business out of an environment that is really going back to basics. The challenges that we have going forward in family business and any family business is, what is the next generation going to do? How do we transition this? How do we grow? How do we evolve? Where does technology come into play? How do we govern the environment? No different in a family farm organic. It's just not going to follow, the usual format. I think that we're used to in the structure and the hierarchy. But the reality is there's no difference between the family farm than there is in a family business producing garments somewhere in the city, and that challenge will continue to be going forward as technology and as big business continues to roll forward. And I think the biggest challenge we face for most people right now is this whole discussion on, is this a lifestyle choice that I want to make? So organic food, for example, is this a lifestyle choice that I am going to make? And how does that affect the other parts of my life? Right now, we cannot have organic food at the same price as the mass-produced food. So for a lot of people, and everybody that goes to the grocery store knows that the price of groceries in the last few years has gone through the roof. Forget even getting into the organic side of things. So the reality is there is a cost segment associated with this, and for some people, this is a choice that they're going to have to continue to make in order to support an industry which is not running on multi-million dollars of margin at the end of the day, but in some cases just enough for them to get by.
From his scenario in the market, it seems like the product is obviously really well appreciated. In their case, they have a competitive environment which features many family businesses, and they cooperate together. I thought that was an interesting angle to the story, because it's not exactly the dog eat dog agribusiness sort of situation where you might see elsewhere in agriculture in North America. Here you have family businesses that seem to have cornered the market.
It's funny, we look at this and say this is a burgeoning business. Well, the reality is, go back 50 to 100 years, and this was the business, right? It was the family farm. It was organic, was the natural way. It didn't actually have to have a name to it. But, the reality is that their place in the market is very, very small. I mean, you might be talking about a group of organic producers that are maybe a couple of % of the entire market. So, they're not fighting against each other. They're fighting against the competition, which is not other organic farms. They're fighting against education. They're fighting against knowledge. They're fighting against, generations of, shall we call it, misinformation on food and how we should produce food, and they're fighting against large corporate environment. And I have a funny feeling that unless there's an ability to have one of these organic farms just stand out so much, that in order for them to survive, they're going to have some kind of cooperative environment that allows them to band together and fight against everything that we have learned in the last 50, 60, 80 years of food production. And, not to mention that, ultimately we'll get to the day that, maybe that putting food first is not going to be an afterthought for the majority of our population in terms of what they're consuming and a health component. But right now, a very large part, certainly of the North American food mentality, is convenience, it's time, and it's cost effectiveness, which pretty much goes against everything that we see in an organic farming operation.
We spoke about the possibility that one day these family farms could consolidate and become a larger entity, more corporate. That I think might work for a lot of different products, but maybe not for this one. Maybe the industry does matter. When you're consulting clients and offering them paths to grow or consolidate with their competitors, the industry must matter, right? Because it's all well and good if it's a widget or a piece of tech. Those things don't have a lot of sentimentality. Those things can be consolidated. When you're talking about generations worth of family farming, well, that takes some special consideration.
Yeah, and I don't think that the banding together or the consolidation happens necessarily at the ownership and the production level, more so at the marketing and the education level. I think your message here to everybody is that they understand that if they want to survive together as an organic environment, that they need to, as you know, as we'll hear, is we need to ensure that there is a proper education out there. So I think they can still compete. I don't think there's a consolidation in the industry that is the way we understand consolidation. This is a consolidation of markets, this marketing, this is a consolidation of messaging, and it's a consolidation of a lifestyle choice that still allows them to have the uniqueness that you're talking about.
Great. Thanks, Mike.
Thanks, Dan.
And as we come to the end of our show, we turn to our entrepreneur, Damien Girard, co-owner of Viandes Biologiques de Charlevoix, and ask him, what is your one piece of advice, sir, for inspiring entrepreneurs? What do you think?
Well, when I began with my project, let's say 24 years ago, I went to see my bank and some people around me. And all the people tell me, well, your project is not good. You'll not be able to sell that animals at this price. And I think when some young people or young entrepreneurs have a project and they're taking some sounds around on their family or some friends and so on, and if everyone tell them, I don't think it's going to work or it's a bad project, I think they have the best project that they never had. Because when people have some references, they can tell, well, okay, it's going to work or not. But when it's a new idea, a new things, I think no people can give you an idea of what they're talking or thinking about the projects. So I think it's the best. And I'm telling that always to some young and people and young entrepreneur, and they're looking at me like a strange people, but I think it's the best conseil that I can tell to young ones. Yeah.
So, Mike, to recap, and it's a great piece of advice, Damien, only founders can drive innovation.
Yeah, it's a good resume. Yeah.
Mike, final thoughts?
Yeah, I think the environment of keeping the drive and that ability open. I think we've learned from part of the conversation today that unfortunately a fire that destroyed your barn and your animals forced you to think outside of the norm. We're also learning that the technology side of all of this does play a part in the research and everything that goes on with organic farming. And I guess the goal of this is going to work going forward. I can't see organic farming turning into the large farm mentality of the Monsantos and everybody else of the world. So ultimately, at the end of the day, we better be able to keep your kids and your kids' kids and your kids' kids' kids involved in organic farming, or we're going to find ourselves full circle back in the process side of things.
Thank you so much for joining us on Inspiring Entrepreneurs. Appreciate it.
Oh, thanks a lot. Thanks for you.
And a reminder, you can subscribe to Inspiring Entrepreneurs Canada as a podcast on iHeartRadio, Spotify, or your favorite platform, and we'll see you back here next week.
Think Big. TNKR Media. Good talk.